in my tenure at Microsoft, I was fortunate to work with some amazing people, one of which taught me to create 3 lists. Doing now, not doing now, not doing never. Is really about telling society to go take a hike. It's about the ability to say, dream. You can have the most expert driver in the world. You can have the most advanced vehicle, advanced car in the world. You can have the world's best pit crew, and you will never, ever win a race without doing one very important thing. You cannot win a race without taking a pit stop.
That's what makes me go harder, faster, bigger in this stage of my life. I'm happy where I'm at, especially knowing where I come from.
It doesn't matter where you're born, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your ethnicity, doesn't matter how much money you have. Because the 2 richest people in the world said, I can't buy another hour of time.
Do you believe in balance when it comes to life?
I work 40 hours a week and I give 5 hours to my family.
Yeah.
Is it balanced?
No.
So how do we create balance?
Wow. Based on what you're saying, if I redefine what balance means or creating my own definition by changing the definition itself, it changed the whole definition about success. Mr. Chad E. Cooper. You have a very interesting and long and extensive
Rep.
Yeah. Goes from US, and I had to take notes, which is super impressive. US Marine, thank you for your service, retired from Microsoft, one of the largest corporations in the entire world, at 34 years old. You were mayor, you served 2 times in your community as a mayor?
Yep. Mayor Pro Tem. I turned down mayor, I think 2 or 3 times.
Damn.
Yeah, the pay wasn't worth the extra work.
But you were reelected once too. So you own a foundation that does work from New Zealand to Guatemala, and you've been doing that for a while, and that's how we connected. You've completed multiple triathlons, and I found something that I've never necessarily talked about it with you, but you applied for the Guinness Book World Record holder for crossing the most common things of a bucket list.
Correct.
Let's start there. I'm curious. What was the record about?
Well, so I will say back in my time when I partnered with the Tony Robbins organization,
which I forgot about that one too.
The coaching director, I was his right hand, and we created a division, the coaching department, to Tony's own words of this is what he'd always dreamed of his company becoming. And in the process of that, I started, and probably owe credit to Tony, at 19 years old probably, I listened to Personal Power. It wasn't even Personal Power 2 back then, it was Personal Power.
You're talking about that you were 19?
Yeah, when I was 19 years old, was really the catalyst to what got me to a point where I just realized at that age, Brian, of create experiences instead of buying things. And so in the process of that, you go through and you dream. And the importance in that is a fantasy. It's really important you can differentiate between a fantasy and a dream. I can fantasize that I can fly without any supporting elements. It's not going to happen in my lifetime, as far as I'm pretty sure, right?
It's a fantasy, yeah.
Might come up with a gadget that lets you do it, but I can't fly, right? And as a kid, we try to test it off the roof, a low one, and we go, oh, okay, it's not possible. A dream, however, is what is often the catalyst to us creating amazing and often legendary lives, right? They start with a dream. And Dr. King says, I have a dream. And look what that did for the world, not even just the United States. And so I've always allowed myself and resisted, because I grew up in a very large family of, oh, you can't be this, oh, you can't be that, oh, be quiet, those kind of things. Why? Well, when you got 6 boys in a house, man, it's noisy, right? That's called survival for my parents. But there was something, in the early days that I got a hold of and started doing personal empowerment, self-help, and I just started to create a list of things that I wanted to check off, things I wanted to do.
Since, at that age? We're talking about early 20s? 19 years old.
Yeah, so at 19, I started creating that dream list. And then as I got older, so at 19 I said, what do I want to accomplish by the age of 40? Because 40, man, you're old. If you're looking at 19, it's like, oh, that's old people there, right? It was like, okay, 20 years. That's almost double. You know, I've been on the planet less than 20 years at that point. Like, what do I want? That was a big moonshot at that point. And I was able to, you know, I put down things like cross the Grand Canyon. It was a lot of material attainment, a lot of adventures,
traveling, and things like that.
And what that allowed me to do is realize that with a little bit of consistency, a little bit of persistence, and a little mental fortitude, you can slowly start chipping off that list. And what it allows you to do subconsciously is to plant the seed in your head. And it's not like I was looking at the piece of paper on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
But I'd come back a year, 2 years, and I was like, holy crap, I've actually done these things.
Yes.
And I started to realize a pattern and a connection of, if I take the time and write it, and it's called the reticular activating system, it plants it in the brain that says, oh, this is not only possible, but I'm going to.
Yes.
Right? And so that then turned into working over the years. And in my tenure at Microsoft, I was fortunate to work with some amazing people, one of which taught me to create 3 lists. What I then call now, doing now, not doing now, not doing never.
Doing now, not doing now,
not doing never. Yeah. What it allows you to do is have the freedom and the liberty to say, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a U.S. Senator. I want to be an elected official, right? And so you can thank that list for you and I connecting, because on that list was, I want to do a mission trip. Okay?
It started as a mission trip, because that's another thing too. It can progress. Things can change, and I imagine you can add, you can change, you can review.
You better be really careful what you ask for, because that was a great example of, I just put down, I want to do a mission trip, and God said, great, the mission leader quit, you lead it. Never gone on one before. They just started maybe 2 trips.
Yeah.
And it was like, not only do you get to go, but you get to create the entire thing, because there was no process. There was no operational.
Standards.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh crap. And that has now really kind of allowed, maybe coming up on, I think, on 20 years of creating 3 foundations.
Yeah.
2 of which are well standing, and if I handed off those boards and no longer serving on them directly.
Yeah.
Indirectly, yes. And then my own foundation that I said, I want to make some changes, I want to do some things. And so the not doing never is really about telling society to go take a hike. It's about the ability to say, dream. You've heard of SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and then time oriented. You don't dream from that.
Yes.
It's not where dreams are created, right? So when we look at some of our leaders, regardless of what you think about them, but JFK said, we choose, listen to the words, we choose to go to the moon, not because it's easy, but because it is hard. That's about a dream. And that's where our imaginations, as a kid, we're curious. As a kid, we don't have lines. And then we're told, oh, you can't color outside the lines.
Yes.
I was like, forget that. And so a not doing never is giving you permission as an adult to say, color outside the lines, be inappropriate.
Yes.
Dream. And then from there, then you can go in, and so I have it every 3 months. I go into that list, and I can look at it, and I can look at the entire list and go, nope, I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Or I might go, yeah, now's the time. So, go on a hot air balloon ride. Awesome, by the way. You should definitely do it. And so by doing that, I just accumulated over decades all of these accomplishments. And some of them were simple. Some of them were legendary.
I mean, if he works in a micro perspective, like I do checklists for stuff that I have to do throughout my day. And to your point, it's sometimes like you get to the end of your day, and when you go back, there's a bunch of stuff that you didn't even necessarily cross, or days before, but you complete it. And the only way that you know that you complete it is because you write it down. So if it works in a micro perspective, I'm sure that it works on the long-term goals, like you're describing.
Yeah, I think the best analogy, one of my dear friends and the coaching director came to me He actually came to everybody and said, hey, I want to do something that's epic for our coaches, that really helps push the boundaries and allows them to grow. And I said, if you're going to do that, I had enough experience at the time, I said, if you're going to do it, when people make a commitment, I've watched in foundations, I've watched in religious organizations, people volunteer. And when they do that, they're like, oh, if I just bail, it's okay. No, it's not. You made a commitment.
Yes.
That aside,
yeah.
I said, I noticed in sports, so I had done a number of marathons at that point, and I think I was already on the Ironman circuit in doing that, and had 33 major sponsors for that. And what I realized is that there was a pattern to getting people to stick with it and follow through to the finish line.
Yeah.
And one of those patterns is make it bigger than yourself. And so, through our relationship, is anything you want to do, add a contribution beyond yourself component, and now people are committed, right?
Yeah.
If it's just you're like, oh, this is hard, oh, something else.
Yeah, you can quit on yourself anytime.
The economy's changed, or I had an unexpected, all kinds of excuses. But when you've made a commitment to a charity, and they're counting on you, you'll find a way. And so I explained to the guy, his name is Mark, and I said, we need to do this adventure, but it needs to be tied to something really large in terms of a charity.
Yeah.
And so one of those was, the first one was to go, it was called Rim to Rim to Rim. So across the Grand Canyon from the South Rim to the North Rim, and then back in 2 days. So you go across to day one, come back to day two, okay? That's equivalent of doing 2 marathons at the elevation of Mount Everest.
Wow.
It is not easy.
Oh my
We had
God.
Navy SEALs as our support team.
Wow.
That's how serious it is, right? It's really hard, and there's no helicopter that's coming down to rescue you.
Yeah.
All right. The charity was Project Athena, that they had put this together, and it was for women who've experienced some kind of traumatic injury, brain cancer, loss of a limb, whatever, that said they wanted to reclaim their lives. That's a powerful. I mean, who's going to let these people down?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And they participate, they go across, and we help them make this happen.
Wow.
To take back their life. You're not going to quit.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, exactly.
And so when we do that, what we realize is that we can do little by little by little, and we get across the finish line. That then turned into, the next one was, okay, he goes, we made good friends with Navy SEALs, and they have this charity, this foundation called the Navy SEAL Foundation for fallen SEALs to take care of the families that are in need. And he goes, Chad, we need to go through Navy SEAL Bud School. I'm like, dude, I'm 43 years old. You're not asking me to go get a Starbucks cup of coffee. That's a pretty tall ask, right?
How long ago was that?
That was almost 10 years ago now, right? But I'm like, dude, it's like 82% of 19-year-olds fail.
Yeah.
I'm 43 years old, and you want me to go through this? And I was like, I've already been regimental United States Marine, right? I've already been, a podium, literally major sponsored Ironman triathlete.
Yeah.
I know what my medal's worth at this. I know what I'm capable of. And I'm like, he's like, yeah, I can't do it without you. I'm like, I'm in.
Damn.
So that was the next thing. But here's what I learned in that is you create this list. How do you actually check it off? New Year's resolutions, we all create them.
Oh, yeah.
And within 3 weeks, we scrap them.
I'm getting to hate New Year resolutions because of that.
So, with my clients, I start in October, 3 months before. And I'll explain why in a minute. So what I learned in Navy SEAL Bud School is the first thing that they wash out a ton of them. The first thing you have to do is 1,000 push-ups.
Oh my God.
If you think about it as 1,000, you're like, I give up.
I mean, the
So
most
how do
that
you
I
do
could
1,000
probably
push-ups?
do is 50 right now.
So how do you do it? You do the first 100, then you do the next 100,
Yes.
then you do 50, and then you do 50 and 25, and eventually, Brian, you're going to get to one more. One more, and you just focus on that next step. You've heard, I think Buddha, Lao Tzu, and countless people. How do you cross a desert? How do you win a marathon or finish a marathon? One step at a time.
How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time, right? So the parable has been used in countless ways. how do you accomplish that many things to have the Guinness World Record holder, say, we're going to take a look at it?
Yeah.
One at a time. So, one step at a time.
So that's I guess one of the traits that you can attribute to successful people, are they able to do big things. The fact that they're able to decompress,
break it down.
Because
what's the next thing?
That was going to be my next question. Again, you're talking about a lot of stuff. You mentioned that when you were 19, you were hearing Tony Robbins, and you got to work with him later in life, which is a huge compliment. So there was you've done a lot of stuff, and you wrote a book about time management.
Yep.
So what would you say somebody, and I guess it goes along with what you're saying, yes, Chad, I understand that, but I don't have the time. I don't have the time.
Yeah, there's a great interview, Charlie Rose, 2021, I think it was, 2020. Charlie Rose interviewed Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. And there were two people I always wanted to work with. One was Bill Gates, check.
Wow.
And the other one was Tony Robbins, check.
Wow. That was in your list.
That was on my list.
Wow.
And that's the thing is how many people are going to be like, oh, that's unrealistic. He's the richest man in the world at the time, right? And it was like, so, right? Now I've added, Billy Graham was on the list, and that's the only one that he's to be a quiet conversation because he's passed.
Yeah, so, exactly.
But he did leave a lot behind. But the other one now is Bono. So if anybody is listening knows how to allow me to I would love to sit with Bono because the charitable work and what he's done, in how long his band stayed together. So in that is looking at how do you break that down into bite-sized pieces, I think is where we were going.
Yeah. Well, when people say, I don't have the time.
Oh, I don't have the time. So the interview was Bill Gates saying to Charlie Rose that he thought that being busy was a mark of importance, of how self-important he was. But that Warren Buffett taught him that actually pausing, actually taking 2 weeks is what he does yearly, and going off to a cabin and no connectivity, he just writes. That actually pausing and taking time to reflect can be more powerful than just being constantly busy.
Yes.
And if you think about this in the analogy of race car driving, you follow Formula One racing, has become a popular sport around the world. You can have the most expert driver in the world. You can have the most advanced car in the world. You can have the world's best pit crew, and you will never, ever win a race without doing one very important thing.
What that is?
Got to have a pit stop. You cannot win a race without taking a pit stop. Because if you're out too long, your tires are going to get bald and slick, and you're going to slam into the wall.
Yeah.
If you don't pit at the right time, you're going to run out of gas. But the thing is it's a sport where you are strategic when you take that pit stop. It's not random.
Yeah.
It is absolutely strategic. And you're looking at your competition. When did they do it? How are they doing it? Right? You have to do it in a calculated fashion.
Yes.
So the thing that Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Formula One taught me is you have to pause. And there's a lot of wisdom in doing that. You learn that from grandfathers and elders, hopefully. Surround yourself by them. When you take it is as important as knowing to take it.
Yeah.
And our society's created this like badge of honor of, oh, you worked 50 hours instead of 40. I worked 60. And it's like, so?
Yeah.
How productive, how effective were you? And so when we look at that, we want to be strategic. The second is that the great equalizer in this is, it doesn't matter where you're born, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your ethnicity, doesn't matter how much money you have. Because the two richest people in the world said, I can't buy another hour of time. I can't buy another minute of time. It is the great equalizer. What separates the ordinary from the extraordinary is how we use that time.
Yeah.
That's what separates us.
That's powerful.
So when you have a list of dreams, you get to choose how you want to split up that time and what really matters.
Yeah.
And I watched Steve Jobs died with an inbox full of emails. Steve Jobs died with a list of to-dos.
Yes.
For what? Was he satisfied? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, you're going to die with a list of outstanding things to do.
Yes,
The question is who do you want to be in the midst of whatever you choose to do?
That's so powerful. And your book actually, it helped me a lot. I don't remember the exact, but I remember the way that you split it times. I can't remember. You probably know the amount of hours in a week. I don't know.
168.
168 hours in a week. And we tend just to divide time into 7-8 hours that we work during the day, and then the few hours that we have to rest after, and the hours over the weekend. But when you start looking at it in very micro and giving importance to the minutes in your time makes a huge difference. There's a difference that you were saying about that, being busy and being productive. It's so powerful. What is the name of the book again?
Time Isn't the Problem.
You are.
We dropped the second part because it was too direct in
Oh, really?
Yes, a lot of people were like, oh,
time isn't the problem.
That's offensive. I'm like, if you can't, here's the thing, it's really not designed for people who can't take an honest look at themselves to claim responsibility. Because, yeah, the original title is Time Isn't the Problem, You Are.
You are.
If you can't acknowledge that you're the problem, and you can't acknowledge that you're also part of the solution.
Yes. But it's true, because Ivana catch me all the time saying, yeah, I don't have time for that. It's like, Brian, like she hates every time that I say it. And it's true. After reading your book, actually, I stopped myself trying to say that. And every time that somebody asks me to commit to something, what I say is, look, right now I can't commit and give it the importance that it deserves, instead of saying I don't have time.
Yeah. So instead of a yeah, but, or no, what I found for myself to be more productive and effective and affirming is from improv comedy, is a yes and. Can you do that? Yes, and in 2 months. Yes, and in 2 hours. Yes, and in 2 weeks, right? A yes and says, I'm open to committing to my dream. I'm open to committing to a deeper relationship with somebody. And here's when that opportunity opens. And what we find in that, Brian, is that our objection, our fears of if I say no, are really just our fears. There's really little risk. They're like, oh, that's fine. I wasn't in it. You're like, what? They're like, yeah, I'm not. It's not a priority right now. You're like, oh. Yeah. So that whole conversation was just in my head. They're like, yeah, pretty much.
Because you want to commit to certain things, but you know that your plate is full.
Yeah.
You got to be aware of what you can commit and what you cannot.
You need to be willing to do that, but I'll tell you that one of the things that I see that causes people not to step up and fulfill their dreams, fulfill their commitments, two major pieces that I found to be vital. One is that we do just chip away at that over time. But in order to do that, the reason that, if you ask me, I mean, you've seen how many times that I've gone down for almost 20 years, 18 years, so only 2 years out of 20, I haven't gotten sick. Like, to the point where I'm like, when I came back from Africa, I ended up in the hospital and they weren't sure if I was going to survive. That's how sick I got, right? Go down to Guatemala, Montezuma's waiting at the door for me, right? It's like my digestive system isn't all that compatible with Central and South American diets, right? So why in the heck would I do it? Because part of the formula to success is accepting that pain is one of the ingredients. Suffering is optional, and I choose not to bring that to the equation.
So what do you mean? What would you say is the difference between pain and suffering?
Pain being an ingredient. If you want to gain muscle and you go to the gym, you cannot do it without tearing those muscles in micro increments. Don't go and do it in a big amount, right? Little bit. Just getting outside of your comfort zone. But if you go to the gym and you keep doing the same weight again and again and again, You're not going to build. You might maintain,
Yeah.
but you're probably actually slowly deteriorating that.
Yeah.
To grow, we have to add more weight, and that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Pain is part of the process to success and to growth. Suffering is the stories about the pain. So just drop the story.
Yeah.
Pain is kind of like a really great cookie. How about we add the salt amount and not the sugar or the flour amount, right? It's about the right ratio.
That will be suffering, yeah.
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 So suffering is the stories that we tell ourselves about the pain.
Wow.
So what if you just stop with the stories?
Yeah.
Or what if you change the stories to, I'm that much closer, right? So think about this in sales as an example, where people struggle in sales, right? Is they get on a call, they get rejected. Oh, I'm a failure. Oh, I can't do it. Oh, I'll never get. Or we can tell the story of, glad I got that one out of the way.
Yes.
The next one, it's just it's a statistical
Yes.
odds, right? Eventually, the statistics are going to tell me. I mean, I work with Major League Baseball players at World Series level. 7 out of 10 times they fail, and they're the best. What industry do you want to go into in career where it's like, hey, Brian, I'm going to have you call 100 people and 70 of them are going to tell you no. You're going to strike out, dude. And that's the best? Oh, yeah, sign me up for that. It's a statistics game.
Yes.
How do they do it? They have empowering stories of, I know what the odds are. And when they hit it, big bucks behind it.
Yeah.
Big celebrity behind it.
But it takes a lot of work and repetition because everybody has different personalities, and I experience myself. I am in a place where I coach people in real estate, and I also get coached. I realize coaches have coaches, and you're in this constant,
absolutely
evolving process. But even myself, and I know that it comes with my personality. I'm stubborn. It takes a lot of repetition. My coach sometimes he needs to repeat himself a lot before I see it through.
Yeah.
Is that a common trait in successful people?
Absolutely. So the first, I said there were two major pieces. The first is the willingness to accept that pain is part of the process. When I did my first Ironman, I did the swim, I did the bike, and we had like this 25-mile-per-hour headwind. I mean, I was cooked after I got off the bike, right? It's 112 miles that you're biking. After you just swam 2.4 miles.
Wow.
Right? Now I've got to go do a full 26.2-mile run.
Damn.
And I started running, my legs were like cement. And I got about a mile in, and there was this wooded area. And I was like, oh, it's on a lake, Lake Erie. And I was like, I just go in there, sit there for 4 hours, come out, splash some, I'm all sweaty, and cross the finish line.
Yeah.
And I went, and nobody would know the wiser, but I would for the rest of my life. And I said, I can't do that. I can't not know whether I'm actually capable or not.
Yes.
Right? I had to accept pain. Oh, there you are. We're going for a ride. We're going for a run. But it's not my identity. I just went and looked at it like Eckhart Tolle taught me, is like, oh, look at it like a little globe, a little ball, put it in your pocket. It's going to go with you, but it's not you. So pain is part of the process. The second is in learning, in doing marathons and learning in working with professional athletes as well, is that if you want to stay healthy, you want to accomplish these things, you always schedule the next race before the starting gun goes off for the current one. You always have the next commitment already registered. You have skin in the game before the starting gun goes off. Why? Because if you don't, you're like, holy crap, man, I was 26.2. That took, I don't know, 6-10 months for some people to train for. Brian, I just need a week, man. I deserved it. Right? I need to celebrate. 2 weeks turns to 2 months. Turns to 2 years, turns to never again. But if you have that next commitment already on the books, then you know, okay, I'm going to take 3 months. Or I'm going to take 2 weeks, whatever it is, you know when it's time to get back into the gym.
And it comes back to the knowing when to stop. The stop, it could be a pause, to rest or a pause to reflect?
Correct.
Because everything that you're saying applies in any areas, not only the physical part.
That's right. So we look at this, and there's examples all over the place. A surgeon just doesn't go open up people and start looking around. They're precise. They go in, they get what they need done, and they get out. Why? Because the longer that they're there, the more infection occurs, or is possible.
Or is possible, yeah.
Where else do we see that today? Well, how about these things all the time? We're not surgical. We are not precise with them. If you know when you need to get off, it's like, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to enjoy.
Yeah.
I typically, it drives some people nuts. I'll watch a movie. It'll take me 4 days because I'll watch 20 minutes at a time, turn it off. Right? If you actually look at movies, I haven't done the research, but if you actually look at movies, they're like 20-minute increments that build, and then you have the pause.
Yeah.
And so I've just naturally found, if I need to go, because I don't consume social media typically, I contribute, but I don't consume.
Okay.
If you look at high performers, they're surgical with their time. They know when to get in, and they have a cutoff when to get out.
Yeah.
These things are designed to never let you out.
Yeah.
You can't find your way out of the labyrinth. So we have to have the discipline to go, here's the next commitment, so I know when the timer goes off, I have something more compelling committing me to stop doing this. Because if this is more compelling, temptation's going to win.
100%.
So if we have something more compelling and the reward is greater, it'll go.
Yeah.
But it can be painful.
Yeah.
This is the thing that I find in society, and it cracks me up, is people are like, well, that's hard. Well, no shit, Sherlock, it is. What's that got to do with anything?
100%.
You know, my son yesterday had the fortunate privilege. We went down to Miami because one of my clients is down there. He's a 9-time world champion boxer. He's already guaranteed Hall of Fame.
Wow.
He's going to come back. He's actually going to live where I live for a couple months and train with Sugar Hill, one of the greatest coaches out there, right? And he said, you guys want to come down? And Wyatt's like, yes, because he's been helping him. He does MMA, as you know.
Yeah.
And boxing's, an important part of that. And so he's like, do you want to train to do some boxing? And he's like, yes. And I was like, okay, I guess we're going down there.
Yeah.
And he just told him, he goes, look, man, I'm going to put you through the ringer. You're going to want to quit. You might puke. I don't care. I don't want to hear you crying. I don't want to hear. I'm going to find out what your breaking point is, and we're going to go past it. And so I just went, okay, they're good. I went in. I came back out, and he's like, I think I'm going to puke. And the boxer looks at me, and I just look at him like, and puke and get back at it.
Yeah.
He's like, exactly. So he and I come from a place of when I was in the Marine Corps and went through boot camp. Somehow I got the flu. And it was coming out both ends. Not a graphic that we want to go into, right? But you're not allowed to have any personal items. You're not allowed to have a watch. They don't want you to know the time. These things don't want you to know the time. They learn from casinos,
yes,
right? They're designed specifically to keep you in, right? And so they had a unique way. They're like, do some push-ups. So they made me do push-ups. What do you think? I'm in the Marine Corps boot camp, meaning I already have to be in a certain level of physical condition.
Yeah.
What do you think a person can do push-ups for how long? It would be...
For how long or how many?
How long? How many minutes?
How many minutes straight?
How long could it straight? Could an average person do?
Straight, probably minutes.
Yeah.
3 to 5 minutes, no more than that.
Yeah. Most people couldn't go 2 minutes. Somebody who's in good shape, maybe 5.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 minutes.
When there's no time, and you got the flu, you're not doing well, you're not thinking about anything other than one more. 45 minutes. Somebody had a watch and timed. I did push-ups nonstop for 45 minutes.
Wow.
When I was done, I had a pool of sweat that looked like somebody dumped buckets on me.
Wow.
Everything was soaked. I had so much sweat that the entire floor was covered. Wow. And I was collapsed. And finally, the drill instructor comes over and grabs me by the back of my it's called a blouse, but your back of your jacket, right? And he picks me up, and he's like, I didn't tell you could quit. And he lifts me off the ground and drops me. Now, if you're faking it,
wow,
what are you going to do? You're going to brace.
Yeah.
But if you're not, bam, face on concrete. One more time, dropped, and he's like, you got 20 seconds. It probably took me 3 minutes to get out of there rolling.
Wow.
I didn't have the flu the next day. But the point is this. I realized at that moment that our brain tells us, ouch, this hurts, this is painful, quit. But our bodies are capable of 20 times more. You think 2-3 minutes. No, I went 45 minutes while I was sick. That's what we're capable of. But if we aren't willing to accept pain as part of the process, if we're not willing to get comfortable being uncomfortable, we're never going to check off a fraction of what's on that list.
Yeah, 100%. Pain, first of all, the pain, which you describe very well, there's a difference, and I like that. Never heard like that, the difference between pain and suffering. But then the reflection part, that's why I don't know that you know Ray Dalio. We have spoken about him. Pain plus reflection equal progress. If you don't do the reflection part, there's not going to be progress. Then you end up only in pain. You've coached so many people in different areas of life. What those maybe top 3 common traits that you find that help anybody from any walk of life have those breakthroughs? We talk about, for example, the perspective of knowing that you have to commit for a period of time, and then also getting to realize that the mindset, it's weaker than the physical body.
Yes.
What else? In the case of athletes, you can make it more tangible in athletes, I imagine, because it gets reflected in the way that they perform.
Well,
what about professionals? And
they uniquely, Olympians, I've had the fortunate privilege to coach a number of Olympians, and they actually have the ability to compress time. Okay, and I'll explain that in a minute. But to just kind of close the loop on getting sick 18 out of 20 times, why in the heck would I go back? Because contribution requires us to experience a level of discomfort. It's painful. I could spend it all on me, and it's going to tarnish, or I can give a little to somebody else, and by experiences and make a difference to help other people have an opportunity. So the reason I keep going back is not because it's comfortable. I go because it's hard.
It's hard.
To JFK's point, we choose to go not because it's easy, but because it is hard. That's how winners are made. Right? That's how Ray Dalio was made, not because it was easy. Comfort's a great place to go on vacation. You don't want to live there, right? And so when we look at that, we have the responsibility of saying, oh, I'm choosing to do this, knowing there's a price.
Yeah.
But the reward is so much more worthwhile, right? To see, as you know, to go down to see people who have nothing, and see these kids lit up by you, to see that you've made a difference. And the reality is you can go down one time and you can make a difference, but if you really want to create an impact, keep going. And you actually see those children turn into adults, that their children now have a better opportunity, and the standard of living is radically shifted to the point where it's only 63 miles outside of Guatemala City, and it used to take us 8 hours to get there.
Wow.
Now it takes us half the time because the infrastructure, because things have gotten so much better, right? And so we have to look at that and say, okay, if we do this, and this is one of the things that Ray did, is he said over time there's certain patterns. So he said, I don't know what the future necessarily holds, but I have a pretty good idea if I actually look back in time, look at history. And that goes back as far as Socrates and the Greeks, right? And the Romans, is history tends to repeat itself, right? So we can look back in time, and Ray went back 6,000 years to go, oh, there's patterns. Let me apply them, and I can succeed financially. Same thing with contribution beyond ourselves. So you asked a question in there that I completely ignored.
The question was more, no, but I still like where this is heading. And you mentioned, for example, the contribution part. I think Guatemala definitely awakened that on me, because it gets to a point, let's say I feel that I'm progressing in life. I'm getting results. I'm happy where I'm at, especially knowing where I come from. But it wasn't until I started doing it for something else bigger than myself, which is one is Guatemala, and then the other one was my family back home. I moved to the U.S. I'm the only one here in the U.S. I get to live a very comfortable life because I know where I come from. Not this for sure. And then it's easier to get complacent and get comfortable. But then when you start thinking about the family I left behind and the life that I can provide. I petition for all of them to come legally to this country. It takes time. But I'm like, okay, now the efforts and everything that I'm doing, more than myself, is making sure that I build something big enough that it also helps them when it's time for them to move in. Yeah. So Guatemala, my family, and my future kids too, that's what makes me go harder, faster, bigger in this stage of my life. So I guess it goes along with what you're saying about contribution. It's making it outside of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, we can go all the way back in time and look at, okay, that sounds like some really sage advice and wise wisdom, and you quoting other people that, you know, have succeeded. How do we know it's true? How do we know that it's worth anything? So that becomes a question of epistemology, which is a fancy word for what's the source. Today we have a world full of people claiming that they're gurus. Yeah. I love that everybody claims that they're a life coach now. I'm like, really?
I was going to go there now.
Where did you get licensed?
I want to talk about that.
No, I was really inspired by mine, and so I decided I was going to go and take my, and like, no, you're a mentor or you're a consultant or something, but you're not a life coach, yes. Right? It's kind of insulting, but we won't go there. It's like licensed, yeah. Certified, went through, you know, the global international process for that. But we have a lot of people with self-proclaimed, I'm an expert.
Yeah.
Great, what's the source? And so when we look at that, Brian, I always look at, okay, where's this coming from? Can you back that? And my answer is, whenever I hear something that sounds profound, sounds wise, I just do as Ronald Reagan did, and he took it from the Russians. It's a Russian proverb of trust but verify. Trust that this person has good intentions and that they've had good results, but never abandon the responsibility or give away the responsibility to verify that it's true, that it's applicable, and that it's appropriate for you. So how do I do that? It's real simple. If I see something like that or hear something like that, I look back and say, can I find it in Scripture? It's that simple.
Yeah.
So if I can find it in Scripture, we know that we are taught throughout Old Testament, New Testament, Torah, Tanakh, you know, we can go across all three of the Abrahamic religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, and we see the same things in there. Yeah. And one of those is cut off a piece and contribute beyond yourself.
Yeah.
We see that in countless representations in agricultural aspects, right? Of agrarian is take and use up 80%, harvest and replant that 20%, right? Is cut off a portion and give beyond yourself.
Yeah. So
we know that through centuries, there's truth. That the epistemology, the source, has some pretty solid foundation, right? That's the testimony that I look at, is I can look at somebody, and that's how I really help navigate between a wolf in sheep clothing and a shepherd who is there to protect the flock. That's how we are able to tell a real leader from one that's got title, but it's really not.
There's also people that they serve, they contribute, but as long as he also represents some sort of benefit for themselves, which is not, at the end, is not contribution. There's no pain on the process. There's no
I'm not a big advocate of, we can look at the hierarchy in spiral dynamics as an example, and we have the ego self, we have the tribe, and then we have the egocentric, we have I'll keep it simple for people. I'm not a big advocate of charities existing from this sole ability to take contributions for others.
Yeah.
I believe charities need to run like a business. They need to be self-sustaining and take contributions, right? Controversial to some of the boards and foundations that I've created. But I found a lot of success is, look, I take a portion and I give beyond myself. It's called my foundation.
Yeah.
The rest is for profit, baby.
Yeah.
And I make no apologies.
Yes.
I'm a for-profit, capitalistic enterprise. And I can't do this without taking responsibility for this, right? As Tony Robbins says, it's the best way to help the poor is to not be poor yourself.
Yeah.
Right? I can't help you if I'm part of the problem.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we have to take responsibility. We have to look at and say, okay, if you're just hoarding it and taking it all for yourself, yeah, that's not right either.
Yeah.
Right? We have a responsibility beyond ourselves. And that had a lot to do with my decision to serve our country as a Marine, right? Was freedom and free, despite the misnomer. The epistemology of freedom is it's not free.
Yeah.
So that also translates into, in business, people making apologies or, oh, a real man, shouldn't fight. Agreed. But he should be capable of it. He should be, you can't always guarantee that somebody's not going to come in and try to threaten your family.
Yeah.
The time to learn how to master the sword is not when the threat is on you.
Yes.
Bruce Lee was fantastic in saying, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
That's
right?
so good.
So we have a responsibility to our family, to ourselves, to our faith, to our finances, to our physical abilities to take responsibility and say, we learn communication. It's called education. So don't give me the excuse, oh, I don't have the time, I don't have the money. It's called the internet. It's called a library. It's called you can figure it out today.
There's so many free resources. There's so much information out there.
So we can be educated and communicate. When that breaks down, number 2, walk away. I was getting off a plane and I had an employee of the airline just cussing because there was a woman that was slow. I'm like, okay, dude. Well, I'll get off in our turn. He just starts foul-mouthing me.
The employee.
The employee.
Wow.
Just found out he got fired.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, so I followed that through, and I'm like, that's not, well, it turned into that, then it turned into him kicking me, which was physical violence, that then turned into racial slurs, and I'm like, okay, enough. That required patience, communication, right? I didn't cause it, but I have a responsibility to see it through, so this person isn't I have zero tolerance for racial behavior, right? Discrimination, I just zero tolerance for it. And so it took some time, but we communicate. When that breaks down, we walk away. This guy's yelling all kinds of slurs at me, and my son's looking at me, and I'm just like, dude, in 20 seconds, it's all over. Just keep your mouth shut. It's just words. Who cares, right? And then the third is if the threat is coming and you have to stop it. Look, we have insurance. You come into my house, you can get past my gate. You can get past my canal. You can get past my Category 5 hurricane impact doors and windows that require jaws of life. And you can get past my police-trained German Shepherd. Dude, you got some
serious training.
Serious training. Take whatever you want.
Yeah.
I can replace it. You try to harm my family, I will stop the threat. I will not hesitate, and I will have no qualms about it. So part of the responsibility is not to say, oh, well, we should just be passive and we should just let. No, we have a responsibility to stand up for injustice, to say there's consequences for your decisions. It's one of the things I admire about Jordan Peterson, is he's able to put it in a context that makes so much sense, right? And we also have a responsibility to take a piece for ourselves, carve off a slice, and contribute beyond ourselves. We have a responsibility in all of that to say if we're going to do that, all of it's going to contain elements of pain.
Yeah.
Except it's the salt in the ingredient.
That's so good. You said it yourself, a lot of information out there. And you mentioned also another way to get discernment on when to know that you're getting the right information is trust or verify.
Yeah.
Go to the source.
And ask people, you'd be surprised. Well, I read it on here. Like, dude, where'd it come from? They have it's just gossip.
I saw that in the website said this. It's like, just because it says it doesn't make it true.
Yeah.
That's so true. And coming back to because you're a life coach, and looking at your resume and all the accomplishments that we talked about, just looking at the conversation, again, this is just trusting, but people can verify all these things. There's a lot of ways that they can verify it.
As they should.
As they should.
Yeah.
You are more than qualified to be a life coach. You mentioned that you got an international certification.
Yep.
That it's one of the basics or most basic way to identify a good coach. Well, would you say somebody that at least is capable, of course, went through a serious training? Because I know a very good amount of people that they call themselves life coaches. I coach people, but I coach people in my field. I'm in real estate. I've accomplished a lot of stuff, way more than the average real estate agents. I've been doing this for almost a decade. So I feel that I'm capable of having, in all capacity, when it comes to real estate specifically.
So let's break that down.
Yeah.
There's a key word in there that differentiates what I do.
At the end, I want people to get some sort of discernment on how can they find good coaches, life coaches.
Yeah.
Because life, it's everything.
Yeah, so let's break that down. The word coach has been around for a long, long time, right? What creates a life coach in the certification process is really not that difficult, because the tenet of life coaching is what separates a life coach from a therapist, from a consultant, from a mentor.
Psychologists?
Yeah. So what makes a life coach a life coach? It's real simple. They don't have to have the answers. They believe at the basis, ITIL, International, ITIL's my computer ways of process. ICF, International Coaching Federation, believes that the responsibility of a coach is to ask powerful questions that bring up the answers from within, and to help you then make decisions and take action from that. Therefore, I don't have to be the expert, okay? I just have to know what the right questions are.
So it's not about telling somebody what to do.
That's what actually separates a life coach from everybody else, is they actually are not giving advice. It's rare for me to give advice.
Yeah.
That's what a consultant does, right? What separates a therapist, a psychologist, from a life coach? Therapy is a great place, and I have a degree in psychology, and it's a great place to say, I'm the way I am because mommy and daddy, whatever, I'm the way I am because of something in the past that I still haven't made peace with. So if I'm still using my past as an excuse for my present day behaviors and decisions, it's a great place for therapy. You can do both simultaneously. If you've come to a place of saying the past is an explanation, it's not an excuse.
A place of reference?
I can't change the things that happen to me, but maybe I can use them, and maybe I can make peace with them, and I understand that it's an explanation for why I behave the way I am, and I can take responsibility to not do that anymore, right? So when I do that, if people who've listened this long are like, oh, it's easy for you, might be surprised. Grew up with a violent alcoholic upbringing, watching a brother get thrown through a wall. It's not easy.
Wow.
Okay. Sexually molested, right? And what's ironic about that is when a boy is molested, they use the word molestation. If it's a girl, it's statutory rape. Why do we shame and make it less for boys?
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, that happened. And I could go down the list of just about every single trauma, and you'd be like, how in the heck am I not a drug addict or an alcoholic, or using that as an excuse? Because it's an explanation. And I've used those experiences, that pain, and changed the story so I'm not suffering through therapy. Now I can take responsibility, and I have a coach that asks powerful questions so I can move forward and build a present and future life that is important. So one of the markers, long way around this, is, are they certified because they understand what their responsibility is?
Yeah.
My responsibility is not to give you advice. In fact, it's to avoid doing that, because I believe you actually know what's best for you.
Yep.
And I might tell you, go read Ray Dalio. He's the expert. Don't listen to me.
Yeah.
Right? The other part is that there's 4 tenets to coaching: physical, logical, emotional, and spiritual. 95% of the coaches out there will coach physical, logical, and emotional, and they avoid spiritual like it's the plague. Why? Because they don't know it. They haven't spent any time in it. They are uncomfortable, whatever their experience is in that, right? Maybe they had a bad experience, and they don't know how to separate. For example, they don't know how to separate the Christian from Christianity, right? So they avoid it for whatever reason. 5% of the coaches out there are all spiritual, and they eject or reject the physical, logical, and emotional. So a master coach is one that coaches all 4 tenets. And the spiritual is kind of like a beet on a salad, you know, the vegetable, a beet.
Yeah.
If you take a beet and you put it on a Greek salad, it bleeds through the whole salad, right? So you can have these three silos, and the spiritual needs to go across.
Yeah.
So if a billionaire comes to me and I work with a billionaire, do you really think I can teach them how to make money better than what they've done?
Yeah, no, exactly.
No, I'm not a billionaire.
Yeah.
You really think I can teach a professional athlete their technique better than they know?
Yeah.
No. But I can help them with the psychology.
Yes.
And probably 80%, Brian, of the clients that come to me are for career-related issues. Be that a baseball player who's on the mound and their game is crap. They're probably in the last contract of their career because they're aging out. They're at the World Series, and mentally they're checked out.
Yeah.
Their game's crap.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're concerned that their wife is diddling somebody else. Turned out to be that's exactly what was going on.
Wow.
And they had to make a decision. Do I focus on the career and get the next contract, which is probably my last one,
Yeah.
or salvaging the marriage? The third tenet is that a coach, it's a no judgment zone, right? So I check my faith-based beliefs. I check my judgment. I check my everything, and it's a safe place. It's probably the only place they can go to where they're not judged.
Wow.
The player chose the contract. Who's it for me to judge? I ask the questions. Advice? I would have probably given them the wrong advice because my bias, my morals are going to dictate that, and it may not be congruent with theirs.
Yeah.
And now they're going to feel judged, or it may not serve their best interest.
Yeah.
Right? So those are to be the three things I would say to find a master coach. A, are they certified? B, do they honor the four tenets: physical, logical, emotional, and spiritual? And C, is it a no judgment zone?
That's powerful. Love that. And I know that that's going to help a lot of people. We almost wrapping it up, but I have a final question, especially now that you mentioned that.
Sure, now that it's cooling off.
It's cooling off. Yeah, it was hot. But I like the fact that you said that a great life coach asks a lot of questions. It's about asking questions, because you do speak to me in questions. Now that I analyze our conversations, or it's basically questions, you know? And it's true. It makes total sense. Now, you mentioned the...
but they mix it up so it doesn't feel like a therapist. And
yeah.
How does that make you feel, Brian?
just like listen now. But you mentioned the four areas: logical, physical, emotional, and spiritual.
Yes.
And this is an ongoing conversation that I have with so many people. Do you believe in balance when it comes to life? Because I've heard people that they say it's impossible to have a balanced life, and which I agree, but I'm one of those that believe that we should try to balance it out as much as possible.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
So let's see if we can hit a couple of really powerful points in that question. Is it possible to have balance? Okay. A, let's put the test of, sounds like sage advice. What's the epistemology? Do we know if it's true? So how do we do that? Okay. If you've heard nothing in any of this, the most powerful gift I can give to the listeners and to you right now is we have an epidemic problem in our society today, and it is this: we can't tell truth from falsehood.
Yeah.
How do we tell truth from falsehood? Most people would think falsehood is simply the opposite of truth. It's not. Falsehood is the absence of truth. So the question is, balance is impossible. Does that have truth, or is it absent of truth? What does your instinct tell you?
Balance is possible because
it's impossible. Is that true or false? Does that contain truth, or is it absent of truth? You may not know why, but what does your instinct tell you?
My instinct tell me that it's true.
That it's true.
Yeah.
Okay. So then let's put that to the test. Mosquitoes. Let's put that to the test. My pastor, wonderful human being, taught this thing called the Plimsoll line. It's the line on the hull of a ship. So Sir Plimsoll owned a bunch of merchant ships in the UK, in England, back in the colonial days. And he kept seeing these things capsizing because they're overloading them. And he noticed that once you put a certain amount of weight, they became very unstable. And so that line that is two different colors on the bow of a ship, actually it serves a purpose. It's not just for aesthetic reasons. Once it gets to that level on the water, you're not allowed to add a single ounce more of weight.
Got you. Wow. Okay. Didn't know that. Makes sense.
Let's put this to the test. Balance is impossible. If I have a a bar or a board, and I put weight over here that's less or more than over here, that's going to do this if I have a center point, right? Yeah. So what you're saying is balance is or is not possible?
Balance, I mean, well, going by that, balance is possible.
Okay, so I add more weight onto my elbow, it does this. Am I balanced?
No, you're not.
Now I'm not balanced.
No, you're not.
Okay, so is balance possible?
Balance.
Let's put this to a practical test. I work 40 hours a week, and I give 5 hours to my family.
Yeah.
That's generous.
Yeah.
Is it balanced?
No.
So how do we create balance?
Put in more time.
We have to add more weight over here.
Yeah.
So we have to shift from here to here. Is that our only option?
Yeah.
No. See, the trick is society has taught you that it's an either or.
I know where you're going.
But what if it's a yes and?
Yeah.
What if the equation isn't here or here, that we transfer it? That's an impossible win, right? We know that Jack Welch, the former CEO of GE back in its heyday, said work-life balance is impossible. It's about work-life choices. It's false. So you're like, okay, I just realized, I don't know why, I know this is false.
Yeah.
But you don't know why.
Yeah.
Because you're not considering the third point. See, in life, the dilemma is only two options. Because the only two options are actually not an option. It's this or that. Win or lose. That's how you've been taught. You have to have at least 3 or more options. So when a resource is taken away from you, right, to create that balance, it's win or lose.
Yeah.
We have to get resourceful, so you have to have a third or more options. Do you see a third here?
No.
Right here.
Oh yeah, the
fulcrum. This pivot is your third option. Now, you're taught it can't move. 40 hours, 5 hours.
Yeah.
But if I move the fulcrum here, guess what?
That's so powerful.
Now I have balance.
So, but put it in perspective and in a practical example. In the family, in the same example, family, 5 hours. I work 40 hours, but I only give 5 hours to my family.
Yep.
If I get to change the paradigm and the belief that
change how you measure it.
How you measure it, yeah.
So in your relationship, if I were to ask her, what percentage does she put into the relationship? Okay. Now she's pretty spectacular. She's probably going to be generous.
Yeah.
Okay. But if it's a typical relationship, they're going to be like, I do 70, 80%, and he only does 20. And then I ask you.
Yes.
Suddenly you guys got like 140, 150%. It's like there's only 100%.
Yes.
But in a relationship, we always think that we're putting in more effort.
Yeah.
So it's a lose-lose.
Wow, that's so powerful.
If we do it by quantity, we don't get balance. If we do it by quality, now we move the fulcrum. I can spend 40 hours here. Let's be honest. She doesn't want 40 hours of your time, man.
Yeah.
You're not that interesting.
No, and it's true. There's so many other factors too.
It's the quality.
Yeah.
Not just, and sometimes it's actually the quantity, right? That's where we have to move the fulcrum and get resourceful. How do we measure it is the importance of, did we get the outcome?
Wow, that's so good. I've always been of the belief of, okay, life it's about 5 or 6 different areas. Relationships, work or business, physical health, spiritual life. And for the longest time, I defined success to try to find balance, meaning, but I also saw it only that way. We all have the same time, I'm aware of that. I've never wanted to sacrifice one for the other. I've always seen it that if I do that, I'm not being successful. Because that's the definition that I guess, put on success.
Okay.
But based on what you're saying, if I redefine what balance means, or creating my own definition by changing the definition itself, it changed the whole definition about success.
Think about this. Gary Chapman, the author of The 5 Love Languages, right, says everybody doesn't get fueled by the same thing.
Yeah.
Mine's physical touch.
Yeah.
Another person might be words of affirmation. Another person might be gifts, right? There's 5 of them.
Yeah.
4 out of 5 of them are like regular fuel. One of them's rocket fuel for you. So it's not about, in a relationship, it's not as much about what mine is as me knowing what hers is and delivering it to her definition. That's how we get resourceful.
Yeah.
And the thing that I would love to share with people is, in the Marine Corps, back when I was in, we didn't get crap. I had stuff from the Korean War, I had stuff from the Vietnam War, and we were like the redheaded stepchild, right?
Yeah.
And so we would acquire all the time from the Navy and other branches. Now, others might use the word steal, and I remember my CEO was like, dude, it ain't stealing. It's adapting to overcome.
Yeah.
It's like, what a creative way colorful way to disguise what we're doing.
Yeah.
We acquired. We got resourceful, right? And because the job had to be accomplished. And you look at World War II, you look at how people achieve, is they get resourceful. So when we look at the 4 tenets, physical, logical, emotional, and spiritual, okay, we've talked about some of those. Logical. Henry Ford was put on trial to make him look like he was an idiot. And they asked him all of these complex questions, and he's like, I have absolutely no idea how to answer that.
Yeah.
And they're like, see, you're an idiot. He goes, but I have these 4 buttons on my desk, and all I have to do is press one, and the person with the answer comes in. I don't have to know the answer. I just have to know which button to push. We have this thing. Why are we trying to be like, oh, I got to decode, the love language of my spouse. I got to figure it out. Dude,
Yeah.
we have this.
You have
Leverage
tools.
the logic, the tools that are available.
Yeah.
If you are not playing with AI, you're behind.
Yeah.
Just in marketing in the last 2 years, I'm watching my team do things that I couldn't even do. I needed an entire staff to do 2 years ago what one person's doing in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
So I wasn't raised with great examples on how to communicate. That's an explanation. It's not an excuse. I literally, Brian, will go out if I have to respond to any plethora, the full spectrum, customer, friend, partner, whatever that might be, because I'm not gifted with speech, especially when I'm emotionally compromised. So I'll to ChatGPT and I'll just type it in how it's coming in, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, dear moron, dear imbecile, right? And I just put it in. So here's the thing. I had a person that was really upset, and I was like, defend, deflect, deny. I was like, this person's an idiot. They don't know what they're talking about. And I went, I wonder if I put this into AI and I simply asked it, identify the emotions this person's experiencing or is likely to be experiencing based on the letter. It came back and goes boom, 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 boom.
Wow.
And I was like, and I see it now. Dude, there's no way I was going to come to that.
Wow.
What I was able to then do is move from judgment to empathy and compassion. And so I then said, okay, started with their letter and said, identify their emotions. And all I did was say, reply with these points, adding empathy and compassion. That's all I did. It got me 90% of the way there, and I was like, this is a game changer.
Wow.
This is brilliant. And I was able to then be able to effectively deliver and communicate and allow the person not only to feel like they were listened to, but that they were heard.
Yeah.
How many relationships would benefit if we just simply said, hold on one second. A doctor doesn't have to rely on everything in their head. An attorney doesn't rely on everything in their head.
Yeah.
A financial advisor doesn't rely on everything in their head. Why are we pretending? I am comfortable, and we haven't had to here, but I'm like, I have no problem being like, dude, I'm not that smart, but I have a lot of quotes, I have a lot of answers, because I've collected them.
Yeah.
Let me just pause for a second and tell you something far more powerful than me trying to make it up or remember.
Yes.
Use the tools.
Yes.
Adapt to overcome and acquire.
Yes.
Steal.
That's so good. That's so good.
We didn't invent squat. Unless you're Thomas Edison that invented electricity, you probably Elon Musk has done pretty good for himself, okay? But most of us, we're just regurgitating.
Most of us, it's like, 2% of populations are innovators. Most of us are not. So All we got to do is
just leverage it.
Yes. And
give credit where it's due. You've heard me give credit to numerous other people. I'm not the author. I'm not the origin. I'm not the composer. But I can create a great symphony through their works.
Love that. This was super good. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate everything that you've done. Like, you have impacted me in so many ways. So I know that we connected to Guatemala, and you gave me the opportunity, which I've never forget. I'll be always grateful for that, because you pushed me in a position of leadership that I've never been pushed. I remember, like, now when you asked me to lead the mission trip, that I was like, my first answer was like, yes, I would love to. I appreciate it, but I don't think I'm ready. And literally,
I wouldn't have asked if I didn't think you were ready.
Coming from you with all this wealth of knowledge, the fact that you saw something in me that I didn't see on myself, it was powerful. I felt super grateful. But at the same time, like, I don't think I'm ready. I don't know. Maybe he's not getting it right at this time, you know? But I remember you telling me this quote that I've never forget: don't ask your task to master your power. Ask your powers.
Don't pray for task equal to your powers. Pray for powers equal to your task.
It was super good, and I've always remember every time that I find myself in the same position where I feel that this is where God is pushing me. If we go to the spiritual side, doubts start kicking in, and the fears. This has been super nice. Thank you so much for the friendship, and I know that a lot of people, anybody that grabs this video is gonna benefit for sure. So thank you.
You bet, man. Absolutely.